You clicked this video expecting me to tear apart the narcissist who broke you. You brought your pain, hoping I would validate your suffering and dissect their cruelty. But I'm not going to do that, because if we only focus on the monster across the dinner table, you will never escape the cage. Here's the terrifying truth. The heaviest chains keeping you trapped in this toxic loop are not forged by their manipulation. They are wired deep inside your own nervous system. Today, we are turning the mirror around to expose the 5 unconscious lies your brain tells you to keep you addicted to a familiar hell. Before we finish, you will discover why your endless empathy is actually a hidden trauma response. Why your subconscious keeps hiring the exact same people to destroy you, and how to finally pull the plug on this psychological matrix. This is no longer about them. This is about the neural grooves inside you, quietly begging for the abuse. But first, let me tell you about someone who truly believed her boundless devotion could fix a deeply broken man. Meet Clara. She is 38 years old, a brilliant corporate executive who manages million-dollar projects with absolute ruthless precision. And yet, at 6 o'clock every single evening, she sits in her driveway. She keeps the car engine running in the dark garage for 15 solid minutes before daring to touch the doorknob. Her hands tightly grip the steering wheel. Her breathing turns shallow. Her vagus nerve is bracing for impact, preparing to enter a psychological war zone cleverly disguised as a living room. Just this afternoon, it took Clara 45 agonizing minutes to draft a single text message. She typed, deleted, and retyped a simple request asking him to pick up some milk. She analyzed every single punctuation mark, every chosen emoji, terrified that a period instead of an exclamation point might trigger a brutal week of invisible rage and silent treatment. At the dinner table, she shrinks her physical existence. She walks on eggshells, breathes quietly, and instantly blurts out, "I'm sorry," when she accidentally bumps her own hip against the kitchen counter. She has become a tragic, automated apology machine. Why does a smart, successful woman tolerate this slow, agonizing psychological suffocation? Because she is deeply trapped by lie number 1, the trap of the sunk cost and the saintly empath. Clara tells herself, "I have already invested 10 years of my youth and my soul into this marriage. He had a terrible childhood. If I walk away now, I'm a selfish monster. My unconditional love and endless patience will eventually heal him." But clinical psychology sees right through this noble, romanticized facade, what Clara proudly calls supreme empathy and virtue. Neuroscience simply calls fawning. Fawning is not a profound moral choice. It is a primal biological trauma response. It is a desperate survival strategy hardwired into our mammalian brains. When you cannot fight or flee from a terrifying predator, you appease them. You flatter them. You become an invisible ghost, molding yourself into whatever they need you to be just to prevent an emotional attack. Clara is not truly loving him. She is meticulously manipulating his moods to buy a temporary, fragile illusion of safety. Her praised selflessness is actually a devastating self-abandonment protocol. And because she deeply believes this narrative of noble sacrifice, she falls right into lie number 2, the myth of closure. Clara keeps her entire existence completely frozen on pause. She endures the gaslighting, the cold stares, and the emotional starvation, desperately waiting for a mythical day that will never actually arrive. The day he finally sits down, looks into her exhausted eyes, and gives her a sincere, validating apology. She has convinced her nervous system that she cannot heal. She cannot move forward until her abuser admits his cruelty. Think about the profound, heartbreaking tragedy of this logic. Clara has willingly handed the ultimate key to her own psychological freedom straight into the pocket of her emotional jailer. She genuinely believes the venom coursing through her veins can only be extracted by the exact same snake that bit her. She is bleeding out on the floor, waiting for the weapon to apologize, but the bleeding never stops. And the invisible resentment silently builds up in her cells, preparing to destroy her from the inside out. But despite her endless sacrifices, the pain only amplifies. Clara eventually reaches her breaking point and decides to set what she believes are boundaries. She cries, she yells, she pleads, "You cannot treat me this way anymore. You have to stop dismissing my feelings." And when he coldly ignores her, she completely falls apart. She feels utterly powerless. This brings us to lie number 3, the fatal misunderstanding of emotional boundaries. Clara believes that a boundary is a tool to control her abuser's behavior. But psychology dictates a brutal reality. A boundary is never about changing the other person. It is a strict behavioral contract with yourself. A true boundary sounds like this: if you continue to mock me, I will immediately stand up and leave this room. You do not control the storm. You only control whether or not you stand in the freezing rain by constantly demanding that he change. Clara is giving away her internal locus of control. She is fighting a ghost, which leads to the most painful, mind-shattering question of all. Why does your brilliant, highly evolved brain absolutely refuse to walk away? Why do you relentlessly demand a glass of water from a well that has been dry for a decade? Because of lie number 4, the illusion that your enemy is sitting across the room. We love to analyze the narcissist. We label them, we diagnose them. But here's the cognitive slap you desperately need to hear. The manipulator destroying your life right now has zero actual power over you. They are nothing more than a terrible actor, hired by your own subconscious mind to star in a very old, very familiar play. Clara is not actually fighting her husband. Her nervous system is projecting the unresolved shadow of her childhood onto him. He is simply a psychological stunt double, a stand-in for an emotionally unavailable father or a deeply critical mother. Why does she stay? Because her inner child is playing a desperate, high-stakes game of emotional roulette. Her subconscious whispers, "If I can just love this broken, cruel version of my parent enough, if I can endure enough pain and finally make him validate me, then I will finally prove that I am worthy of love." She is not in love with him. She is locked in a repetition compulsion. She is using the bleeding present to forcefully rewrite a tragic past. Clara is trying to collect a massive emotional debt from a man who did not even borrow the money. And as long as she keeps casting him in the role of her parent, she will remain trapped in this invisible cage. Her ego screams in defense. "But he is the one hurting me, yes, but your neural grooves are the ones holding the door wide open." And when you finally realize that the villain is just an echo of your own unresolved childhood, something terrifying begins to happen inside your physical body. The mind can be easily tricked by romantic lies and noble sacrifices, but the body never lies. And Clara's body is about to stage a violent biological rebellion. One evening, Clara's husband abruptly announces he is leaving for a 3-day business trip. Society and romantic movies tell Clara she should feel a pang of sadness, she should miss him. But the moment the heavy front door clicks shut, a terrifyingly honest physical reaction takes over her body. Her tightly coiled stomach suddenly unclenches. Her chest expands, allowing a deep, full breath of oxygen to finally reach her lungs. The dorsal vagal shutdown that has kept her frozen begins to thaw. The literal air in the living room feels incredibly light, clean, and suddenly breathable. She pours a cup of tea, sits in the profound silence, and for 10 glorious minutes, she feels a visceral, cellular relief. But then, the cognitive dissonance strikes like a physical blow to her gut. A sickening wave of guilt violently washes over her. Her mind screams, what kind of terrible, selfish wife actually feels overwhelmingly happy when her husband leaves the house? This crushing guilt is the gateway to lie number 5, the devastating, catastrophic confusion between true love and a biochemical trauma bond. Clara has spent years believing that her intense, heart-pounding obsession with this man was proof of a profound, once-in-a-lifetime romance. She remembers the early days of dating, the intense butterflies in her stomach, the racing heartbeat, the breathless anticipation. But neuroscience strips away the poetry to reveal a brutal biological truth. Those butterflies were never romance. That racing heartbeat was never love. That was a massive, blaring biological alarm system. Her amygdala, the brain's threat detection center, immediately recognized a dangerously familiar predator from her childhood. It recognized the exact same emotional unavailability, the exact same erratic microexpressions of her critical parents. Her brain flooded her bloodstream with cortisol, screaming at her to run. But because this danger felt so identical to her definition of home, she mistook a literal panic attack for a soulmate connection. She labeled her biological terror as passionate love, and now she is hopelessly trapped in a brutal neurochemical cycle. The constant gaslighting and emotional starvation spike her stress hormones to unbearable levels. Then he drops a tiny, pathetic breadcrumb of basic human decency, a casual compliment, a half-hearted apology. Instantly, her brain releases a massive, intoxicating hit of dopamine. This is not a relationship. It is a biochemical slot machine. Clara is not a devoted, fiercely loyal partner holding on to a fragile marriage. She is a biological addict, desperately craving her next chemical fix just to stabilize her nervous system. When the house is silent, the absence of his drama means the dopamine supply is completely cut off. The terrifying silence she feels is not loneliness for him. It is the existential void of her own unhealed childhood. Without his manufactured chaos to distract her, she is forced to hear the agonizing cries of her own inner child. She realizes that the abuser is just a drug. He is a toxic substance she subconsciously uses to numb the unbearable silence of her own psychological emptiness. Her entire reality begins to shatter. She is standing at the bottom of the deepest pit, staring at the terrifying reflection of her own nervous system. And therefore, the grand illusion completely shatters. Clara is left standing alone in the terrifying, deafening silence of her own kitchen. The desperate urge to pick up her phone, to draft another pathetic essay begging for his attention, suddenly dissolves into nothingness. For the first time in a decade, she does not look outward for salvation, she looks inward. She slowly sinks to the cold tile floor, pulling her knees tightly to her chest, and she begins to weep. But these are not the bitter tears of a broken, defeated victim mourning the loss of a great romance. This is the profound, earth-shattering release of somatic forgiveness. She is weeping with overwhelming, radical compassion for her own exhausted biology. She firmly wraps her arms around her own physical body, rocking gently, and she silently whispers, "Thank you. Thank you for protecting me. Thank you for doing whatever it took to survive that empty childhood. But the war is over now. We are safe. You can stand down." In that beautiful, agonizing moment of radical acceptance, the ego finally dies. Clara stops demanding a magical apology from a man who is fundamentally incapable of empathy. She realizes that psychological closure is not a gift you receive from your abuser. Closure is a unilateral decision. It is an inside job. It is a strict biological decree that you make with your own cells. Here's where the ancient, ruthless philosophy of Stoicism beautifully collides with modern quantum mechanics. The Stoics knew that true, indestructible power is entirely internal. You cannot control the cruel, chaotic actions of a deeply flawed human being, but you hold absolute authority over your own attention. In quantum physics, the mere act of the observer withdrawing attention causes the energetic structure to collapse. Clara suddenly realizes that she is the observer. She is the ultimate power source of this entire toxic matrix. The narcissist does not possess any actual magic. He is merely an emotional parasite, existing entirely on the electricity, the fear, and the frantic reactions that she constantly provides. What happens when the human battery suddenly unplugs itself? The machine dies. The invisible holographic cage instantly crumbles into dust. By simply withdrawing her emotional focus, by refusing to participate in the drama, Clara starves the illusion to death. She is no longer trying to rewrite her tragic childhood by fixing a broken man. She has forcefully taken back the master keys to her own nervous system. She steps out of the victim role, assuming a much heavier, much more glorious identity. She is the cycle breaker. She is the final impenetrable wall. The generational trauma that was blindly passed down to her ends right here on this kitchen floor. She will not pass this faulty, desperate neural groove down to her children. The silent suffering, the invisible shrinking, the addiction to toxic chaos, it all stops with her. The silence in the house is no longer a terrifying void. It is the blank, magnificent canvas of her new liberation. The illusion is finally over. You no longer have to bleed to prove you're worthy of being loved. By facing these 5 unconscious lies, you have done something most people will spend their entire lives actively avoiding. You looked into the terrifying void of your own nervous system, and you chose to rescue yourself. Do not ever let anyone tell you that walking away is a sign of weakness. Walking away from a biochemical addiction disguised as a soulmate requires the psychological strength of a titan. You are not a victim of a narcissistic monster. You are the sole architect of your own reality. The moment you pull back your emotional energy, their power over you instantly evaporates into nothingness. You hold the master switch. But here is the harsh biological reality you must face tomorrow morning. You have intellectually dismantled the psychological cage, but your physical body is still violently vibrating from the trauma. Your amygdala is still scanning for invisible threats. Your muscles are tense. Your heart still races when your phone simply buzzes on the nightstand. Awareness is the crucial first step, but it does not magically reset your biology. You cannot just think your way out of a nervous system that has been heavily hijacked by years of chronic toxic stress. To truly break free, you must physically hack the hardware of your body. If something inside of you finally shifted today, if you are ready to completely rewrite your biological code, then do not walk away just yet. In our next video, we are moving from the mind directly into the physical body. I'm going to show you exactly how to reach into your own biology and manually flip the switch on your vagus nerve. I will guide you through immediate somatic techniques to shut down that exhausting fight or flight response in under 10 minutes. We are going to teach your physical body that the war is finally over. Make sure you're subscribed so you do not miss it. Until then, protect your peace. You have earned it.